The main slate for Week 16 in NFL DFS is a pretty interesting one because I think at least there is a pretty clear build. We can spend down at running back, spend in the mid-range there, and then pepper the high-salaried wide receivers, get to a lot of them, and feel pretty good about doing so. Potentially spend up a tight end, maybe a lower-salaried receiver too. We'll break it all down, get you ready for Week 16, let you know why we are leaning that way, and get you set with all the knowledge you need for Week 16's NFL DFS main slate. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and FanDuel Research. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a managing editor of digital media for FanDuel Research, joined here as I am every Thursday by Brandon Gdula. He is a senior managing editor for FanDuel Research. Brandon, Week 16 is coming in. Happy holidays to you. How you doing today?
Well, Jim, my voice isn't great. So we'll keep it a little bit shorter, a little bit sweeter today. I don't know. I was talking to my wife all morning. My voice sounded fine, and then we log in.
Did you look at the running back pool? Is that what led to the sickness?
Yeah. I think it got me down with the sickness, yeah.
Oh, down with the sickness. We're going with Disturbed at 9:01 Central Time. That is a harsh wake-up call for sure, but hey, we're going to soldier on through because if all these NFL players can play hurt, then so can we. We're going to break down Week 16 main NFL DFS slate, letting you know where we see value across this week. So I actually think there are some pretty good spots at running back, potentially a wide receiver as well. We'll break down bookmaker stacks, and much more to get you ready for Week 16. But first, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, wherever you get your podcast. Tom Vecchio has you covered for NBA DFS every weekday, breaking down the slate with the Daily ISO. You can find that on the cover of the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, and also over on FanDuel TV Plus. Austin Swaim talks UFC DFS when they have slates as well, all right here in the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. No more recap shows for the NFL this year because we have Christmas coming up on Monday, New Year's Day, the following week. So no more recap shows, but we'll have the preview shows through the Super Bowl. So you can find us right here, Thursdays, 10 a.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube page and over on FanDuel TV Plus. Also, do not forget, we have a free play going on each and every week over at FanDuel Research. To get yourself entered for no entry fee, go to FanDuel.com/research. On the homepage, you'll find a story that has a link to the free play in there. Go to FanDuel.com/research to find that free play each and every week. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bets. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There is a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, totals, and more. So visit FanDuel and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL, must be 21 plus and present in select states. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. First online real money wager only. $5 pregame money line wager required. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342 in Arizona, 1-888-789-7777, or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana, 1-800-522-4700. Visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas. 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia. 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Let's dig in now to the slate overview for week number 16. Brandon, to me, it begins with the fact we actually do have some decent value at running back this week. A couple of guys you could consider below $7,000. And to me, that means I want to get to some high salaried wide receivers. What to you stands out when you break down this week 16 main slate?
An overall lack of quarterbacks as well. There's one guy who stands out.
maybe we can get Robert's asking if the Bucks hat means we're on Baker this week. So maybe we have an extra quarterback to consider here.
Maybe. I always try not to wear hats of teams playing on the main slate, but like I'm not a fan of any team. So
I'm a fan of teams that give Rachaad White a lot of volume.
I was going to say I'm a fan of Rachaad White this week, but other than that, I'm a fan of Justin Fields this week.
Yeah.
And after that, quarterback gets iffy. And I don't know how like you build lineups or other people build lineups, but for me, every lineup starts with quarterback, and that just dictates where I go with the rest. I mean, there are like values that I want to build around, so I could just maybe say that I'm building around them. But as far as when the lineup actually get like, I guess the lineup technically starts with the best values, and then it's what quarterback am I playing, which game do I like. It's hard to find that this week.
Yeah, it really is, to me at least, all about Fields. And he really is like the guy for this slate. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And it's hard for me to find another quarterback I like equally to him. Like in our love section, I couldn't really find a second guy that I was like super, super into. So, we'll see how that goes as far as finding alternative quarterbacks for this week. But I think that I agree with you where that is where I began my lineups. Now, I remember this is like going to date me a lot, but like back in the day, Fantasy Feud was like one of the old like defunct DFS sites. They were like, make sure to fill in your value plays first so you know how much salary you have left. And I was like, oh yeah, this is great advice. Thanks, Fantasy Feud. I think I still have like $2 in my account there. I should probably find a way to retrieve that. But anyway, like they would tell you to put in the top values first. That was bad. I think it does revolve around game stacks because for a tournament lineup in NFL DFS, that's gonna be the catalyst for whether or not you come down with the top prize. So to me, it does begin with quarterback, and for this week, it does begin with Fields. You didn't expect a Fantasy Feud shout out on the show here?
I may need to rest my voice throughout the show, but I gotta just say I don't know what you're talking about.
You don't remember Fantasy Feud? I'm pretty sure you wrote like Fantasy Feud helpers for like
no. It's not that. It's just I don't know how you got onto that so quickly. And in your mind, it makes sense, but
yeah,
I don't know.
It's the attention deficit stuff. Sometimes it crops up in very weird ways. But you were talking about like, oh, maybe if you have the value plays, blah 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 blah, and like that was
what I really meant was like, look, if we have a great value running back, you can maybe say you're starting your lineup there, but the rest of your lineup is built around quarterbacking, and so it's Justin Fields.
Yeah,
I don't necessarily envision. Look, I like DJ Moore plenty. I don't think I view him by himself as like a guy I want to build around compared to maybe some other receivers. So it was a tricky week. We have a lot of overlap as well, but we're going to kind of, and there's one play who kind of came up right before the show that we reversed course on, which would help a lot.
Yeah, usually late week editions are not something we get onto, but I think that the oversight on my part to not be on this guy before was an error. We'll talk about him later on. Let's begin things though by talking about the injuries impacting the week 16 DFS slate. Tyreek Hill missed practice on Wednesday with his ankle injury. It seemed like he was close to playing week 15, but did ultimately wind up sitting. Now, this makes it possibly sits again, but like with how important this game is, if they want to win the AFC East, I don't think he will. Devon Achane missed practice with a toe injury. The toe injury played through last week. Raheem Mostert rested on Wednesday as he's been doing all year long. We'll talk about the Dolphins in the bookmakers section. Jonathan Taylor got into full practice Wednesday with his thumb injury. Zach Moss did not practice with his forearm injury. Michael Pittman is limited. Gives him a pretty good chance to clear concussion protocol by Sunday, which I didn't think would happen given the way that hit looked this past week. Falcons' rush defense has been really good this year, but Taylor's workload has also been good when he's been healthy. So any interest in Taylor, Brandon, as a spend up to be contrarian option for this week?
I'm going to say no, but with the caveat, it might be easy to sort of fall into the same default builds this week. It's hard to know because we have such a similar process at this point that we align. I don't know if everyone else will align, but allocating a lot of salary to running back is going to help you be quite different because there are some lower salaried backs that optimizers seem to like, some confusingly so, but some justifiably so.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to get there. I don't think there's enough wiggle room with the matchup and the salary. He's still great. His workload's great. He could hurt us for not using him. I just don't think that it's likely enough to want to get there.
Yeah, I think that I'm pretty much on the same page with you. I would say of the higher salaried running backs, he's the one I'm most likely to wind up using at some point, just because like he can have yardage upside. He hasn't really shown it this year. He's only had one game with more than 100 yards from scrimmage. So like he could burn you, but maybe the odds are lower, especially in a tougher matchup on the ground. So he's the most likely high salary back for me, but that still does not mean I'm super high on him regardless. CJ Stroud looks to be trending toward another missed game this week due to a concussion. He's still experiencing symptoms, which really bums me out for him. Hope he gets okay here pretty soon, which means Case Keenum will likely get the start again. Nico Collins did get in a limited practice on Wednesday after missing last week with a calf injury. We'll talk about Devin Singletary later on, but any interest for you in the pass catchers for the Browns with Keenum or for the Texans against the Browns with Keenum starting?
I mean, we saw some life, but I don't really want to bank on Case Keenum too much.
I agree.
So I'd probably lean toward no. I don't think I have to. If anything, I have receivers to pick from. Biggest question, and I don't know the salary, because again, I don't like to look at salaries and then talk myself into guys. I like to talk myself into plays and then see if the salary is reasonable. But where's Noah Brown?
He's high, 69. He was one of the guys I looked at on the recap show on Monday, and I kind of thought I'd be on him, even though it's a tough matchup. But once he clocked into 69, I was pretty low on that. Even with I thought Stroud would play at that time, and then you take away Stroud against this defense, like that's not ideal. So I think that's a bit too high for me, and I think that's probably where you'd settle in as well.
Yeah. So no pass catchers, I don't think.
No, I think that it's really just Singletary. If we get there, it is a Case Keenum revenge game, so there is that. But that's worth at least a 15% bump to the Texans projections in general. But outside of that, Trevor Lawrence missed practice Wednesday due to his concussion. He still could clear in time if he gets in a limited practice on Thursday, but this does ding his odds of playing. Zay Jones probably not going to go. Has a hamstring injury. If Lawrence can't go, will you target any of the Jags pass catchers in a plus matchup? And if he does go, how high would you be on Calvin Ridley and Parker Washington and Evan Ingram?
I love Ridley with Lawrence. I've really liked Evan Ingram more and more. His target shares have been really consistently high, which is something that I value a lot. I'd probably get to Washington as well if there's Lawrence. If there's not, that's a big drop off in terms of expected efficiency.
Yeah.
I think I'd probably be out. Is that too dismissive?
I would still consider Ridley, especially as like a bring back for white lines, just because like the salary is super low at 68 and he's going to get a lot of volume. He had 12 targets in that game, I think on Monday. Yeah. 12 targets there, 13 the week before, obviously hideous efficiency in both those games, but they were also way tougher matchups than when he gets here against the Buccaneers. So I think like a White Ridley mini game stack is in play. So even if it is CJ Beathard, and I do not like CJ Beathard, I think he's pretty trash. Our guy Nathan Work got signed out their practice squad. He's with the Patriots now. Like that's so rude of them to take him away from us. At least start if you're gonna take him. And the Texans tried to claim him too. So people are on our guy Nathan Work, Canadian superstar. But
the Canadian destroyer.
Yeah. I think I would still get to some Ridley. I think I would cross off Washington if it's Beathard, but I could still get to Ridley if it does wind up being Beathard. Just not as heavily as I would if it were Lawrence. And I'd be high in this game if it were Lawrence. And I'd be high on Ridley specifically if it were Lawrence too.
Yeah, I mean, if your salary's still in the 6,000s and you're the true wide receiver one, even if your quarterback's not great, like
yeah, I agree with that.
We're on the same page.
All right. Kenneth Walker III didn't practice Wednesday due to a shoulder injury, which I didn't notice during the game on Monday night. So it's noteworthy. I would say the Seahawks tend to practice less than anybody else in football, I think. So like in terms of like, oh, this guy didn't practice a week, he's still going to play. You know, that's more prevalent with them than anyone else. If Walker does not go, I'm going to speak for you and say we'd be high on Zach Charbonnet. If that happens. If Walker does go, we'll talk about how to handle them in the trend section. Geno Smith was also full, meaning he should be good to return this week. Marquise Brown didn't practice Wednesday with a heel injury. He's been dealing with that for a decade now, it seems like, so I'd bet he finally sits out this week. Greg Dortch, Rondale Moore, and Michael Wilson were the three receivers, with Brown missing most of Week 15. We'll talk about them in the bookmaker section. The Packers didn't have either Jaden Reed or Christian Watson at practice on Wednesday. Reed suffered a toe injury in Week 15 and did not return. Watson has not practiced since his hamstring injury. A.J. Dillon practiced, so could have just a one-game absence there. Let's assume that Reed and Watson sit. We could have value plays available in this game with Tucker Kraft at $5,300 a tight end. Dontavian Wicks is $54. Are you willing to go with them? Maybe Romeo Doubs or Aaron Jones in a game with a very low total.
Yeah, Wicks jumped out to me. He's been running more routes. Doubs is the kind of player who has been playing. So we're always looking for players whose roles increase. But he's had a knack of scoring touchdowns, which I'll take, even though the results haven't been there. But we can stick with Wicks here. Again, role expansion recently, got some yardage juice. You can notice the glaring lack of touchdowns there. For the salary of 54. I like that. Might be silly to go with him instead of Dobbs at 57. I'm kind of leaning Wicks though.
Yeah.
I'm still fine with Kraft, but we have a lot of good tight ends this week. So I want to make sure my tight ends have some upside, which I think Kraft does.
Sure.
But Aaron Jones is the one who stands out to me, I think, most because running back's pretty iffy. We've got Rashad White. Like, we're just going to spoil this. We love Rashad White. We love Ty Chandler. After that, it's kind of gray. And I think Jones should at least be in that conversation. He might not be I don't think he'll end up my RB3, but there's like 4 or 5 guys who could be RB3 to whatever that math would be, RB7.
I think that consideration is Devin Singletary, Chuba Hubbard. He's the guy we talked about this morning and finally decided we should just be on him. Devin Singletary, 62, Chuba Hubbard, 64, Aaron Jones, 67. I think Bijan Robinson's in that discussion please, I'm sorry. I should have warned you all. If you vomited, I'm sorry. Upon hearing his name, I'm sorry. That's my bad. But I think he's in play for the RB3 as well. I think they're all kind of in the same tier, honestly. I would probably put Jones at the lower end of that tier. I prefer Wicks as like a value play in this game, but like Jones not out of play, especially if he, our old tag gets a full practice by Friday, just because I think that's a better indicator of like him being fully healthy versus like playing because he needs to.
Yeah. I don't want to think about Bijan too much.
I don't think anyone wants to think about Bijan.
Yeah.
That's part of why I like him is I don't think people will go there despite the fact he's now back indoors, which means a better game environment, facing a bad defense. I think there are things that do benefit him here.
Are any Packers like close to core level plays for you?
No, I don't think anybody in this game will be. Chuba would be the closest. Like it's just too low of a total for me to have like a core play there. I think like Wicks is more so like, okay, I have one slot I'll use for a value receiver. I rotate through Wicks, Jameson Williams, guys like that. I think that's kind of the realm that he's in.
Yeah, I don't see any way this game is super high scoring. I know FanDuel Sportsbook has odds on.
You gonna take this as be the highest scoring game on
no,
Sunday?
I wanted to see where it actually ranked. I should have had that pulled up already.
I did take the over. The
over is different than
it scoring 175 points. Yeah.
So this is the second, tied for the second longest odds to be the highest scoring game on Sunday. At plus 1,700.
Where do I have it ranked among Sunday games? Okay, so Miami, Buffalo, or Miami, Buffalo, Miami, Dallas. Why did I still the injuries tag up? Miami, Dallas. I have Minnesota up there, and then it drops. Ooh, wow. 17-1 might actually not be not be a bad number. You're all depending on the Panthers scoring points, which is always kind of scary. But like I'm just saying, just throwing it out there.
I don't think either of us are saying that this game will be a back and forth affair, but I think that there's value plays here, and Chuba
Right.
Hubbard mini stacked with some Packers, even like an Aaron Jones stack. I know there's a slight negative correlation long term between running back stacks, but
It doesn't cancel out upside. Like, especially for
yeah.
a guy like Aaron Jones who gets work in the passing game. Hubbard does to an extent too. So like
Yeah. And there's a difference. We're talking guys at lower salaries. We don't need peak games from everyone.
Exactly. Will Levis didn't practice Wednesday due to a sprained ankle. They're facing the Seahawks, who had strong outside corners, but Devin Witherspoon didn't practice Wednesday, and then Reek Woolen got benched on Monday for a bit, so that's kind of weird. Any consideration for you to go at DeAndre Hopkins with Tannehill likely back in the saddle here?
I really like what I see from Hopkins, like long term. I'm definitely not out because I love DK Metcalf.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very fun stack to have access to. Guys who just can have 50% in-game target shares. Coming off of a down game in terms of production, Hopkins is, despite 9 targets.
Yeah.
He had 196 air yards. I mentioned a stat recently where when Elijah Moore got like 245, that there was only like 10 games of players getting to at least 200 as of a couple weeks ago. It's one of the best like workloads there. He just needs to catch the ball, which is that's not on him, but I'd rather have that opportunity than like a lack of that opportunity. So
Yeah.
I'm into Hopkins, but I also definitely don't mind the Seahawks defense at 35.
Oh yeah, I agree with that.
So,
I would say the air yards will go down when it's not
sure.
pure D Gaffer Will Levis. I think the efficiency
Although,
will be neutral, which is good. And that helps Hopkins. But like Levis just like chucks it like no other.
doesn't Tannehill
His ADOT's like
Tannehill's
high, but it's not like
9.2?
like Levis just
That's
like bombs.
That's high though.
It just bombs.
Yeah, but 9.2 is pretty high.
Yeah. Hopkins in games that Tannehill has started 11 deep targets in 6 games, 11 deep targets in 6 games. And he averaged 3.8 in games with Levis. So I think it'll go down, but like, that's fine still, just because like his salary is pretty low, 71. So it's still okay with Hopkins, despite and again, the efficiency is neutral between Tannehill and Levis. Brian Robinson missed practice Wednesday again due to his hamstring injury. The Commanders also did not have the starting left tackle or center. Seems bad. The backfield was a mess without Robinson last week. So are we good to avoid it against the Jets here?
Yeah, nobody got a 50% snap rate. I'm passing.
Good. On the other side, Zach Wilson seems likely to sit in week 16 due to a concussion. That puts Trevor Siemian in line to start. Great matchup, but we can cross off all Jets, right?
You're the Trevor guy, so
I know.
You tell me.
It's not his fault. It's the Jets' fault. It's not Trevor's fault that he's struggling. We're gonna go with that.
How low would
free?
Garrett
I would need their
Wilson's
salaries to be free to get to Breece Hall or Garrett Wilson.
Okay. Sometimes we always play the opposite game. Like what salary do you think someone's at? Like what salary would you need? Like how far off?
Where's my breaking point? I have the total in this game at 33.7. So hard pass. I will not go there, regardless of how good the matchup is.
I don't.
33.7 is actually the second highest total on the main slate. So at least there's that.
I was gonna say it feels like we're living in the 30s for the past like month and a half.
We certainly have been. We are not living in the 30s though. With our first game in the bookmaker section, I was still on the Packers and the Panthers when I decided to screen share. That is not in the bookmaker section for this week. Instead, we're talking about the Cowboys and the Dolphins, where the total has gone down a tick to 50.5. I agree with that movement personally. I think that it should go that direction. The Dolphins are 1.5 point favorites. No other total on the slate is higher than 46.5. And the Cowboys last week, Brandon, flopped in Buffalo. down games do happen. But how are you viewing this game for stacking? Is it bulletproof for you? Because it's not for me, and I kind of want to get your vibe on it.
It's not. And like when I look at the sims I run and stuff, a lot of these guys rate out like solid, but not as you would expect based on how high the total is relative to the rest of the slate. A lot of that has to do with salary, but I mean, if we take a step back and look at, we'll start with the Cowboys here. Like, we are a pro Dak Prescott podcast, like overall. I don't ever truly fear his upside, and he has upside. He has like, now his upside's more like in the 28 range than it is like 38, although, you know, he can get over 30. You know, he had a stretch recently where he was sort of living in that 24 to 30 range, and he has that 38-point game. But I don't necessarily fear it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't really fear Tony Pollard, although we kind of still maybe some FOMO of like, no, this is a good workload. Good
I forgot
offense.
him when I was listing running backs. He should be in that discussion though.
Yeah. Like what I'm trying to get at is it comes down to CeeDee Lamb as like a priority. I would put Jake Ferguson in that conversation just because tight ends, you know, it's good, but I think it comes down to like, does CeeDee Lamb become a priority at 94? Is he for you?
Relative to the high salaried receivers, so let me just pull out here and show all the higher salaried receivers. We got Tyreek at 10,000, Justin Jefferson 92, Mike Evans 87, Amon-Ra St. Brown 86. I'll put DJ Moore in that discussion too at 82, and then Jalen Waddle 81. I think that Lamb is like potentially my favorite of that grouping. I'm hesitant though.
But the thing is, he might be your favorite, but are you going out of your way to build lineups, like start lineups with CeeDee Lamb?
No, because I'm more likely to use Justin Fields as my quarterback, and therefore DJ Moore is more likely to be the guy I turn to there.
So it just makes it feel like by default, this game is not as stackable as other high total games have been in the past for us.
I agree. And like even last week, like we liked that game, the Dallas and Buffalo game, but like I was, because I hand build, I don't know if people know this, I hand build my lineups. I was hand building lineups on Sunday morning, and I like realized I had forgotten Dak, and like I didn't really care that much that I had forgotten him. Like I went back and added some, but like I didn't get that high. I will say I'm higher on Dak this week than I was last week because the Dolphins defense has gotten a lot of praise recently for good reason. But they've also faced a ton of awful offenses. They faced the Jets twice recently. Zach Wilson didn't play one game, got concussed pretty early in the second game. And then I think they faced the Titans. The Titans actually moved the ball against them with Levis, and the Raiders were in there. The Commanders were in there, a lot of really bad offenses, and the Cowboys aren't that even when they go on the road. Like they're still a good offense. Like they had that big game against Philadelphia, which was also on the road. Wind speeds here around 10 miles per hour, so that is a slight downgrade, but like I'm higher on the Cowboys passing offense this week than I was last week. So there's that, but like I agree with you where it's like I'm having a hard time truly prioritizing this game despite the high total.
And then if you flip it around, I mean, we know Tyreek Hill, not 100%, didn't practice Wednesday, dealing with not the kind of injury you really want for someone who's the reason he's so good is just how fast he is. Now, he's still probably faster than anyone on the field anyway, but it's not ideal. There's no real wiggle room for a letdown at the salary of 10,000. We have value. We can get there if we want, especially if we don't play Fields. I'm just not as like afraid of it as maybe I should be. Maybe I regret that, but none of these teams are overly stackable.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of, they're also hard to mini stack because there's like there's no value for the Dolphins.
No.
There's really no value for the Cowboys either, unless you consider Pollard like a value.
And
Ferguson is it like,
yeah.
but they're at the they're like mid-range guys at their salaries.
Ferguson especially is at the high end of value consideration. Robert on YouTube asked if Jalen Ramsey will shadow CeeDee Lamb. I'd expect him to. Last week he requested to shadow Garrett Wilson and did. Wilson ran 54% of his routes against Ramsey last week. So that's not going to push me off CeeDee Lamb. Honestly, it doesn't bother me at all because CeeDee Lamb is very good. We'll get a lot of volume. It's a fair question to ask because Ramsey's playing very well. But again, different beast for Jalen Ramsey in 2023 to face CeeDee Lamb than a team quarterback by the two-headed monster of Zach Wilson and Trevor Siemian. I do want to talk the backfields here. You talked about Pollard. I think that he is in the mix once again. Just the salary's low enough. It's a good enough team. So I will be on Pollard. But I also think that Devon Achane is worth considering depending on his practice reports for this week. Again, didn't practice Wednesday because of a toe injury. Last week, he had 0 full practices. He was limited Friday. Didn't think he was going to go, honestly. And then he was active. Had a pretty muted role. But I think the key thing for me is this passing game workload that Achane has seen since he came back from the most recent injury. That's a pretty good workload. It's a bad running back slate. His salary is down to $7,500. And we saw the Cowboys get shredded by a kind of similar back in James Cook last week. Raheem Mostert is still the top guy in this backfield based on his snap rates, based on his goal line usage and stuff like that. But I do find Achane interesting. Is that wrong in your eyes?
Achane's, so he's one of those guys where you want, our process is adjusted opportunities largely within a good offense with a good red zone role. He's got some of those boxes, but the thing with Achane is that he gets such a high opportunity per snap rate that it's a little bit different at least. He's gotten a carrier target on 52.6% of his snaps this year. That's basically as high as a full-time running back gets. It's Derrick Henry's. What year? I'm not feeling great, but what year do you think it is?
He's LeGarrette Blount.
Could you pick two more different players?
They look exactly the same. I see no differences between LeGarrette Blount and Devon Achane.
It's the same rate as Kenneth Walker. It's the same rate as Aaron Jones. Basically the only full-time back, if you consider Derrick Henry full-time anymore. So there's always, so this is so tricky because I'm going to say the word floor. There's a low floor for Achane because he can escape a game with 7, 8, 9 carries, 3 to 4 targets, maybe doesn't break anything, but he's just very different within this offense. And if you think this game is high scoring, I would assume Achane has something to do with it.
Sure.
If you're low on this game, you're probably Mostert might steal all the goal line work anyway. Yeah. So there's nothing for Achane left. I think Achane's still in that conversation for the RB3, but he'd be toward the bottom of that tier due to the volatility.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Raheem Mostert, he gets the touchdowns, but the yardage has not been there. 64.7 yards per game since Achane returned, and he's $8,800. I think that salary gives you an out to say, if it kills me, it kills me. I don't think I'll have a single Raheem Mostert share this week.
So we know he's got the 20 touchdowns. How many do you think my model has him expected for, which is largely based 13. On yardage? How many?
13.
He should have 7.5. based on long-term stuff that indicates what leads to touchdowns.
And it's not like his red zone share is insane. He has a 47.1% red zone share since Achane came back. He has 5 touchdowns in that time. That makes no sense.
I think he just scores at such a high rate on his red zone work that,
But is that sustainable? And I think that's the question you're getting at.
Well, whenever the team's defending the Dolphins or worried about everyone else and Mostert just gets the walk in, go in the opposite direction, it might be sustainable for potentially. This year.
Yeah, I think that Achane is really purely tournaments only and a low exposure tournament play, but good for the low entry tournaments where your competition with Achane is very small.
I would also need a stack of this game to play Achane. I'm not going to play him as a one-off.
I agree with that too. Any final thoughts for you on this game?
Tua, where are you with him?
In the QB2 discussion, but like I pivoted off of my loves for this week just because like I went with Dak over him instead. Like it's so hard when you don't run. Like you need really good efficiency and really good volume. And like he can have that, but like it's just been like so long. I don't know. This is like a donkey brain like thought, but like he hasn't done it in so long. I know. Like
No, it's an always sunny thing. Donkey
donkey
brains.
brained?
Yeah, I have a certificate
What?
deeming me that I don't have donkey brains, but you don't have any such certificates.
I have
so.
no idea what you're talking about.
I know.
Where are you on Tua?
I was trying to move past it, but it was too good not to.
Uh-huh.
You
Are you feeling
drew
the same with
attention
me as Tua though?
Yeah. So can I ask you quickly? We saw some tweets or information about the Dallas defense. Where's Dallas's defense for you?
Tweets about them?
Yeah, like if you remove, like, and I think the process makes sense, but like if you remove big plays, like Dallas's defense looks kind of iffy.
Uh-huh.
But you said like you view Dallas as like a good overall defense, right? Because numberFire has them 5th against the pass.
Yeah.
So
I think they're struggling against the run right now. Jonathan Hankins banged up. He didn't practice on Wednesday again, so there's a good shot that he sits. I still think they're a good defense because their pass rush is so insane. And like the Dolphins' offensive line is beat up, so maybe that's why I feel lower on Tua. I'm trying to figure out honestly why I'm lower, but maybe that's it.
So like if you view Dallas as a good pass defense and you don't think it's fluky due to like interceptions and touchdowns and stuff like that, like Tua's got 4 games against top 10 adjusted pass defenses based on numberFire's metrics. He's at 237.3 yards per game. This team gets like weird with their splits because of blowouts and stuff, but in terms of efficiency, 0.01 per dropback over expectation in terms of passing that expected point. So he's basically played like to the level of the defense when he's played tough defenses. He's really just torched like the bad defenses.
Yeah.
So the fear goes down for me. Yeah. So again, I'm not going to fault anyone for Tua. I'm going to play more Tua than I want due to the fact that I should probably stack this game a little bit.
Yeah.
But goes back to like what I said earlier. I don't like to look at I've moved past looking at salaries and talking myself into guys. I want to talk myself into the plays that I love and find ways to play them.
Sure.
I'm kind of just fearful of not playing Tua, and that sounds wrong.
Okay. I think that if I were summing up this game, I would say if I have 0 guys from this game in my like head-to-head against you, I would not be shocked at all. I will stack it for tournaments at times, but like I don't think there's anybody here like in Pollard, maybe. Maybe for I don't know. Maybe Pollard, but probably not.
All right, can we just establish that we have Rashad White as the RB1 and Ty Chandler as the RB2?
Yes.
We're seeking who to play in our flex, basically.
Correct.
I don't know if one of those games is in the afternoon, but point being,
this game is in the afternoon, as is Bears Cardinals, and
I meant Rashad.
Oh,
the Bucs do play in the afternoon. Why do they play in the afternoon?
I have no idea. I couldn't figure that out either.
All right, so we probably
they wanted primetime Baker.
Yeah, 405. So we're still seeking that RB3. Pollard might be. No, it's Chuba Hubbard, I think, is where
might be Bijan.
Oh gosh.
How many times can we make people vomit throughout the show between Pollard and Bijan? We're gonna do it. Less vomit worthy is Lions at Vikings. Right now, the total is 46.5. The spread is 3 in favor of the Lions in this game. Vikings defense has broadly played well of late. The Bengals did get to them last week, but can the Vikings defense slow the Lions here? And how do you view the Vikings offense?
I really like Amon-Ra St. Brown still. I feel really good with the way that he gets his work. His red zone role is phenomenal. I think St. Brown, if we look at receivers above 8,000, he might be my favorite. Other than that, I don't want to get to the running backs, honestly.
Either of them?
Like as a priority?
Yeah.
No. Do you want to get to them as a priority
Oh, as a
play?
priority, no. But like I'll filter through. I think like Montgomery's salary is pretty interesting at 73, given that like he's just like the way to handle some running backs this year has been go to the Lions running back who's coming off the down game because their roles have been the exact same. A bit of separation last week where Gibbs did get more yardage than Montgomery, but like they've been the Spider-Man meme. They've been just magnets for each other ever since Montgomery came back. As far as like yards from scrimmage outside of last week. Salary
Yeah.
73, people will probably be more higher on the passing game. Gibbs coming off big game. I could see Montgomery being like a tournament play, but like, no, I don't think I'm prioritizing any Lions this week, honestly.
So okay, maybe this is where we differ.
Okay. I like Amon-Ra. I agree with that part. Like, I think that he's got a great workload. He has a path to a ceiling. His red zone role has been, I think, undersold by the touchdowns that he's had. If we look at them in the 6 games since Montgomery returned, Amon-Ra St. Brown has a 45% red zone share or red zone target share. Like that's absurd for a wide receiver. So maybe I should just be higher on Amon-Ra St. Brown. Maybe he's like the priority here. I think the reason that I didn't list him there is because I know I'll have a lot of Fields. And again, I'm going DJ Moore with Fields if I'm using Fields. So that's the one reason. But like if as like not considering quarterback, like just like projection, game environment, quarterback skill, Amon-Ra is probably one there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to play. I'm low on the running backs, I guess.
Yeah. I think Gibbs' salary is too high at 84.
Right.
You know, it's a reaction to a big game last week, which is fine. It happens. But I'm fine not getting there. I do want to play the other running back, though, Ty Chandler. It's a really tough matchup for him. Detroit's been awesome against the run this year. So matchup wise, it's bad. He had a very good matchup last week with the Bengals, but the workload is also really good. Alexander Madison didn't practice again on Wednesday. And in that game, Chandler, 23 carries, 4 targets, 57% red zone share. He had 4 out of 7 chances inside the red zone, 157 yards from scrimmage. That yardage will scale back with this matchup, but he's also at home. His role is objectively amazing relative to the rest of the slate. So even in a tough matchup, I want to be heavy on Ty Chandler this week. I think you said he's your RB2. Definitively, why is he there for you?
I think you listed all the reasons, but
Okay.
also 74% first half snap rate last week, ended at 81%. So they just started leaning on him more, and reports are that that's the plan. So
Yeah. Even
can't
if
really overthink this one.
even if Madison is back, I'm still going to be on Chandler because like Kevin O'Connell has said, like he used the word featured twice when talking about Chandler on Monday. This is when we didn't know if Madison would go. He said featured role. He didn't say the featured role. He said a featured role, which does change the quote quite a bit, I think. But like, I think we can feel good about Chandler regardless. Again, it's a very tough matchup, and I respect the Lions' rush defense, but he is still very firmly a priority. I do think in my non-Chandler lineups, there's a lot of incentive to get to Justin Jefferson as like a pivot because we can assume that Chandler will be very popular, and a lot of people don't like using a running back and receiver in the same lineup. I think you should be okay with it based on what the data says, as far as like how often non-correlated players from the same team wind up in the same perfect lineup. But like Jefferson, really good workload last week, 10 overall targets, 3 deep targets. All the touchdowns went to Jordan Addison, but like they were prioritizing Jefferson, and he's facing a pretty bad secondary. CJ Gardner-Johnson might play this week. He's back to practice on Wednesday, which is cool because I thought he was done for the year for the Lions. But like that's not going to be enough to scare me off Jefferson. Maybe if I didn't hate Nick Mullins, I would definitely go Jefferson above Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I do. So that's the one reason I prefer St. Brown. Where are you on Jefferson?
Basically, same place as you.
Okay.
I think he's more of a differentiation off of Chandler. Less of a priority than St. Brown, though. Trust the quarterback more.
Mm-hmm.
Although I think I'm higher on Mullins clearly than Jim is. This does sound like is this game more stackable than Cowboys Dolphins?
There's no quarterbacks I want to use in this game.
Are there quarterbacks you want to use
I think Dak's my QB2 right now. So yeah.
Okay. It's
mostly
close
because there are no good quarterbacks, but
yeah, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
You wouldn't consider Nick Mullins?
Absolutely not. Rather get hit by a bus. I think the odds that he gets benched for Jaron Hall are 50 percentage points higher than the odds I use him in DFS. AKA, I think there's a 50% chance he gets benched for Jaron Hall during this game. Nick Mullins,
he was fine last week.
No, he wasn't.
I know
his
he made some
efficiency numbers. No. His efficiency numbers were fine. He was not fine. He is, if you take Josh Allen and strip away all the things that make Josh Allen cool, aka like his athleticism, he is chaotic. He is unhinged. He is unpredictable. But then he also doesn't have like cyborg level arm strength and like the biggest bones you've ever seen on a human being. So like take away the things that make Josh Allen cool and just give him like Josh Allen's ADHD. Like that's what you get for Nick Mullins. That's Nick Mullins. He threw a pick to a defensive tackle who was tackling him. Negative highlight bias is bad, and we should avoid that. However, I can't get that play out of my head.
I'm not going to talk you into him. I'm not going to play him, but
people are going to play him. Other people will. I can almost guarantee it.
They've got decent odds to lead Sunday in scoring.
Good. Those are terrible odds. Oh, the Vikings, you mean? Or this game?
Well, the Vikings.
The Vikings to lead the slate in scoring, they should not be that high.
Well, they're
Mullins.
They're 16-1, which is like middle of the pack. But Detroit is second. This game could be back and forth. There could be a lot of, he's got like viable assets surrounding him. You could do worse at quarterback than Nick Mullins.
Barely. The counterpoint is Nick Mullins. Let's talk about the tight ends here because they're the ones I'm having the hardest time with. Sam Laporta 72. That's pretty high. I like his workload, but I don't like it that much. TJ Hawkinson 68 has not had as good of a workload with Jefferson being healthy. So like both these guys are good, but I would have a really hard time using them over Trey McBride. I like some of the other guys in the 6,000 range too, like Ferguson, and I think David Njoku is 66 too. So as much as I like these guys, I'm not going to get there outside of game stacks. And honestly, even within game stacks, like I'll just be kind of middling on them. Am I too low on Laporta and Hawkinson?
Laporta's salary is as high as it gets. He's coming off a 3-touchdown game. This game to other people is probably going to sound more stackable than it does to Jim, clearly. So I think he's going to be a popular pick when we have, especially optimizers liking a lot of low salaried running backs. I think he'll be pretty popular. I wouldn't talk anyone out of him. I think he's due for some negative touchdown regression. I prefer Trey McBride for a lot of reasons, but you could do way worse than a guy who has 3 touchdowns last game, 140 yards 2 games ago. He's good. As far as Hawkinson goes, I think the salary's too high. If I'm going to play a tight end here, it's just going to be Laporta.
Yeah, here are those odds you were referring to with the highest scoring team for Sunday. Dolphins leading the way at 7-1. Lions are plus 750. If I'm looking for one that I like, I don't mind the Bucks at 16-1. I think, I just think the teams at the top are a bit overvalued. So like the Vikings shouldn't be as far behind the Lions as they are, but like I'm not like a lot of times we talk about, okay, like I like the stacks this week and I'm just going to build around them. I don't feel that way this week personally. And I'm just lower on the top total games than I typically am.
I understand it, but I like this game more than you do, I think.
I think the one guy I feel good about outside of Chandler, like feel legitimately pretty good about, is Jameson Williams. Last week, 7 targets, which was a career high, I believe, for him. And they weren't just like bomb and pray kind of targets. He was getting like some more creative targets. Need to check the Lions injury report because Josh Reynolds had a back injury. He's been kind of dealing with that for most of this year, I believe. Reynolds didn't, or he was full in practice on Wednesday, not even listed on the injury report. So like he's good to go. But like I like Williams at 52. I need to have a lid on his roster rate because like there are so many paths to him busting. But like, it's a guy who's getting some targets, gets downfield work, has yardage upside in a game that has a high total and tight spread indoors. There are enough checks there for me to get to him. Are you okay with Williams?
Sure. He's game stacks only, but it sounds like you're not going to stack him. They're stacked this game, so.
Well, I mean, I'll stack him with Chandler. And I'd stack him with Jefferson. I'm okay with having him alongside Amon-Ra St. Brown just because, like, we're using them for different reasons. So,
Yeah. He's fine.
All right. Let's shift then to talk about our final bookmaker game of the week. That is the Arizona Cardinals at the Chicago Bears. Right now, the total is 43. That has come down 1.5 since things opened, and the Bears are 4.5-point favorites. So it's definitely come down. It's lost some of its appeal, but it's still a decent implied total for the Bears. Their implied total at one point was behind just the Dolphins, Cowboys, and Lions. But it's a plus matchup for Justin Fields and DJ Moore. So I'm still on them despite the fact this total is coming down. How are you viewing the Bears here and any bringbacks on the Cardinals side?
Justin Fields is the only quarterback I like this week.
I agree.
And I guess I always run into this with Jim. But what I mean by that is he's the only quarterback I truly love.
Mm-hmm.
Other quarterbacks I can nitpick a lot more easily. So we still have a very similar consideration set at quarterback, but I just kind of frame it like, if I don't love you, I don't really I'm not going to say I like you to like play, So Fields is the guy for me. I don't see really any scenarios where I move off of him in our head-to-head or my main lineup or building around. The hardest part is he's hard to stack because there's really one great option. I'm not the hugest Cole Kmet guy.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'd be playing him out of obligation to stack with Fields. You can always do worse than stacking a tight end with your quarterback, but he's not a priority for me necessarily. Fields, though, is the guy. He's got the matchup. He's rushing. He's got a stack partner.
Yeah.
And probably due for some positive like passing touchdown regression.
Sure.
Hasn't had a ton lately. So he's the guy for me. As far as bringbacks go, it's Trey McBride.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Fields, Moore, McBride is probably the best stack I can come up with this week.
Yeah. I agree. I think that is a phenomenal game stack here. Matchup on both sides is good. The Bears defense has really outperformed expectations, but not against tight ends. You've been sending me a lot of numbers on that. And I think that makes a lot of sense that they would struggle against tight ends. McBride's target share could be astronomical this week if Marquise Brown can't go. So it's a very logical stack that also does mean it'll be a pretty popular pairing. So that's why I'd want to give at least some consideration to Kmet at 62 is okay, I can get exposure to the Bears passing game without taking the exact route everyone else is taking. So it would be Fields with Kmet. I'd probably still put Moore in there personally, just because I don't mind pairing them together. If you look at them in the games Fields has played, where are my notes? The target shares for the Bears are 29% for DJ Moore, 21% for Kmet. That's pretty good for a tight end, even at $6,200. 25% red zone share for both guys in that time. And Moore has a 41% deep target share. I also will say the weather in Chicago is fine, which is weird for December. Christmas Eve, it's going to be 52 degrees. I'm kind of bummed out by that, honestly. I love a white Christmas. We're definitely not getting it this year.
Hey, we are.
You are?
Shod white.
Oh, white Christmas. Yes, I'm in. Okay, I like that. But I the problem I have with the Fields Moore Kmet build is I really don't want to use a receiver on the Cardinals. I thought about Greg Dortch when we were talking on the recap show on Monday, but he hasn't gotten yardage on the targets he has earned. He does earn targets at a pretty high rate when he's on the field, but it doesn't translate into yardage. What?
You said he earns targets. He's got 3 targets his past 2 games.
Well, but his target per route run rate is 17%,
sure,
which is fine for a guy at $4,700, but it's still 1.0 yards per route run. That's not ideal.
No.
And Michael Wilson's really just kind of a field stretcher. Doesn't get a lot of targets. He gets more yardage upside, which is, I guess, beneficial. He ran a lot of routes last week. I just don't know if I want to bank on him at 51. Like, I think you could consider him in that, like, that mixture with Jameson Williams and Dontavian Wicks as a low salary guy you include as like a rotational piece. But like, I think if I were to go with Kmet, I would just go with no bring back as opposed to forcing it with one of the wide receivers.
Yeah, definitely for me, no double tight ends this week, even though running back is a little uncertain.
I gave it like route. I thought about it for like 30 seconds earlier this week.
Yeah, I don't think you need to. I'd rather, if I'm going to flex a non-running back, it's going to be a receiver. So
basically, you're saying in that scenario that Kmet outscores Devin Singletary, Chuba Hubbard, guys in that range, and I just don't think that's super realistic.
Yeah, we have some options. We also have a couple receivers in like the 6,000 range you could talk yourself into, depending on Michael Pittman's status.
Yeah. So. A couple? What do you mean a couple? There's only one. There can only be one Alec Pierce.
Well,
Josh Downs bad. Are you higher on Wilson than I am?
Yes, but I don't think so. I don't really want to bog down a whole lineup based on Michael Wilson. I know he gets me access to ceiling, but if he gets me like 2.1 FanDuel points, that lineup's not doing much of anything unless you hit on the 100th percentile outcome of everyone else. And I think that's too realistic, too likely to happen for me to want to build around.
Yeah, I had some offers from Gabe that were still okay last week, but
yeah, okay, sure, they were okay, but
yeah,
they weren't great.
Yeah,
because
So will you include Wilson in your Fields lineups? Like, if you have 10 Fields lineups, how many are bringing back with Wilson?
Probably do like 8 with McBride and maybe 1 with Wilson,
and then 1 with none,
and then 1 just yeah.
I'd probably do 7 McBride, 1 Wilson, 2 none. I think that's the distribution that I'd most likely have. I could basically be 2 Kmet lineups with the rest having DJ Moore. So, sure. Running backs, I'm not going at anybody in this game. Are you?
In this game?
Yeah.
Nah.
Perfect. Anything else, or can we move on to trends?
I think we can move on.
Okay, let's do so then and begin our trends discussion by talking about the Seattle Seahawks, because they get Geno Smith back this week after good vibes from Drew Lock. And honestly, like, Seahawks offense has shown a bit more upside. Recently had that Dallas game overlapping with them. They got their left tackle, Abe Lucas, back. So I think there is some like signal in the recent surge, and they're facing the Titans, whose defense sucks. So what are you seeing with the Seattle Seahawks recently? What does it mean for our lineups this week?
You got some interesting splits for Seattle, facing Tennessee, who's 27th against the pass, according to numberFire's metrics, 7th against the rush, so a bit of that funnel vibe. Seattle won last week. They're lively. They need to do some stuff. They need to win, keep the foot on the pedal. And, one thing that I like to look at a lot is post-buy splits. It's maybe not always super relevant. Maybe there's not always a change, but sometimes if there isn't a change, it's telling. But if there is, it would be logical that teams would take the break, figure things out, and come out with a bit of a different approach. But especially whenever there's a high-profile rookie involved, and there is here, Jackson Smith-Njigba's role with the team since the bye has been a bit different. 65% route rate, 15% target share before the bye, but since up to 77% of the routes, 18% target share. And we have a 4-game sample with Geno, Kenneth Walker, and DK Metcalf healthy since the bye. And what this does is puts me on DK Metcalf this week a ton. He has a 29% target share for 10 targets per game. Catch rate over expectation is minus 14% for just 4.3 catches per game and quote unquote just 71 yards, despite like a really bad catch rate. 138 air yards per game, ADOT's almost 14 yards, 5.8 downfield targets per game, which for me are 10 plus yards downfield. Really good red zone share, 50% of the targets. I think he might erupt this week in this matchup against a team that just allows downfield passing and allows big plays on those downfield passes. Tyler Lockett, though, still very good relative to salary, 25% target share, 75 yards per game, 25% red zone share. And then you go back to like Jackson Smith and Jigba in these games in particular, not all of his post-bye games. 15% of the targets, really low ADOT, under 4 yards, minimal downfield work, still 50 yards per game. But if you take a look like at the whole process here, Lockett's salary still looks better than Metcalf's, but Metcalf has a lot of upside in his profile. JSN 5,900 is the salary as you're pulling him up now for anyone watching. I don't know if he's got the juice to take advantage of a team that allows a high ADOT. He might. Did we get a bark?
She was like smacking her lips and I didn't know what she was doing. I know she was like chewing on something. She's just very sleepy. I was worried. I had to like take my earbud out because I didn't know what she was doing.
Okay. Well, last week we got a bark on Aaron Jones.
It's a dog, by the way. I'm not talking about like a human like this. This is my dog who's just smacking her lips like a big weirdo.
So I think I think we're gonna agree. Love Metcalf. Probably gonna be a little low on Lockett for whatever reason. I feel like you're warming up to JSN a lot. I don't quite see it this week. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
no,
he should be in the conversation for a value receiver this week. I just don't love him. And then as far as the running backs go, a bit too much of like a 60-40 split. I don't necessarily love that. So
yeah. Unless we get a situation where Walker sits, in which case Charbonnet's good. But yeah.
What's his salary?
I didn't look.
57.
Yeah, heavily. The Titans, Jeffrey Simmons didn't practice on Wednesday again. They got shredded by our guy, Singletary. He helped get me into the dynasty semifinals, so I gotta lighten up a bit on him. I agree to unlock it though. 67 is just kind of like it is whatever. I think that also same thing with Smith and Jigba. It's like it's whatever. It's really more so about Metcalf. I looked at a different sample than you, slightly different, like basically the same thing. But like if we look at the games DK has played since the bye, 25% overall target share, which is fine for 76, but 42% deep target share and 48% red zone share. So in line with what you said, where it's like the high leverage targets are sick and he's facing a terrible defense. So I think DK might be my favorite one-off receiver of the week at 76. Is that fair?
Very fair. Tennessee just bad across the board against receivers. I want to get to DK in my main lineup.
I do too. And I can get there in a Fields lineup with DJ Moore and Trey McBride. It does require some maneuvering, I would say. But like it can work. Question for you is, Gino, $6,600. If quarterback sucks, should we not just spend down? I'm not saying that this is like something I think we should do. I'm asking you, do you think that Geno Smith is in play at 66?
I feel like if you're not going with Fields, there's a good case to saving salary.
Mm-hmm.
Geno's in that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I built 10 lineups, I'd probably have like 6 with Fields, 2 with Kyler, and maybe I just go Geno and DK, or like Geno and JSN, and just hope for like a 4 touchdown game from Geno.
Yeah. I think it's viable. I think Geno's at least a consideration for my quarterback too this week. A lot of guys are, because there's no one who really stands out, but like I think he's at least in consideration at $6,600. So I'm bored with that for sure. And I'd put in Hopkins as a bring back there if I'm using the Seahawks passing offense. Let's go to my first trend and talk about the Jags defense. That game is kind of fun for this week. The Bucs and the Jags. It gets a little bit less fun if Trevor Lawrence can't go, but we can still like the Bucs side of things. They're in a pretty good spot here against the Jags defense. Across the full season, the Jags rank 26th against the run, according to numberFire's metrics, which gives us the full green light for Rachaad White, which we would take if it were a worse matchup. He has 99 plus yards from scrimmage in 8 of the past 9 games, and only one of those was against a bottom 10 rush defense. That's what the Jags are. So at $7,600, Rachaad White is one of the, I would say, like free plays of this week. He's apparently the highest salaried running back on a different site this week, and I don't think that's totally out of play.
He's 77, just to clarify.
Now I'm out. That $100 that ruins it for me. Done. He was 76.
To shout it out.
Yeah, no, I'm out.
Yeah, well,
the Jags pass defense has been slipping recently too, though. It's not just the rush defense. The Jags have underperformed expectations on early downs against the pass in 6 of their past 7 games, and they were a full tenth of a point worse than expected in 5 of those. So they've been like really bad in 5 of their past 7 games. Their cornerback Tyson Campbell has been in and out of the lineup in that stretch, potentially helping explain the troubles. Didn't play back on Sunday night, and I think that makes the Bucs passing game pieces viable as well. The salaries are not low on them. Mike Evans, $8,700. Chris Godwin, $69. I think Godwin, now that he's actually showing some more juice, is more in play. Apparently his wife got mad at the offensive coordinator on Instagram. So squeaky wheel narrative for Chris Godwin, helping pump up that yardage. I'm finally in on him. You broke me. You were right. So I like White, and I will have him in the grand majority of lineups this week. I don't mind having Evans or Godwin in there as well. I would say relative to the high salaried receivers, I do still like Amon-Ra St. Brown more than Mike Evans at 87. I like Jefferson more too, but like there's enough there where I at least consider Mike Evans. So where are you on the Bucs? I assume we're in lockstep on Rachaad White. Do you consider Baker at all? How are you viewing the Bucs here?
Yeah, White's the RB1. He might be in every lineup for me almost. Just as someone who builds like not 100 lineups, I'll say.
Yeah. You focus on a core of lineups instead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike Evans, it's like the inverse. I've been not higher on Godwin than Evans, but I've been higher on Godwin than you, lower on Evans than you. He's just scoring at a really high rate. I don't think he's ever had a normal year with touchdowns. He either has like 1,500 yards and 3 touchdowns or like way too many touchdowns. But you can't really knock what's going on here. So it's more of a stackability situation. So I'm much more inclined to play Mike Evans if Trevor Lawrence plays. Then again, Tampa Bay like needs to win.
Yeah.
And like play good football. So I'm not as sensitive to like, will this game stay close? Like it's going to behoove them to play well and, win it whatever cost and, keep the foot down. But Godwin, I'm struggling because I've liked what I've seen from him just from a like production or not a production standpoint, but an opportunity standpoint, not from a production standpoint. Still due for a big touchdown regression though. He is if you look at all main slate relevant wide receivers. So I think that's like how many here, just to give some context. It's like almost 60 guys in my spreadsheet. He is the biggest touchdown regression candidate, with Mike Evans being the biggest negative touchdown regression candidate. So like maybe something flips eventually.
Sure.
Problem is the $6,900 salary. Don't love that, but I should probably just prefer him to Calvin Ridley if Lawrence sits.
Sure.
Would you go that far? Where are you with Godwin this week?
Much higher than I have been. He's finally getting downfield work. And like having double-digit targets in back-to-back games, like it's hard for me to be annoyed with that. If you look at the games that Evans has played the full game, Godwin, 23% overall target share, 24% inside the red zone, despite that 1 touchdown. It's like good red zone role, just hasn't converted that into touchdowns, which he should eventually. Godwin, I think this is post Instagram yelling, has a couple of deep targets in both games, or he had 4 in one game and then 2 last week. So higher in than I have been. I think you're probably right though, to go Godwin over Ridley if we assume Lawrence does not go. That's probably fair.
Baker.
I don't think it's a cross off. I prefer Geno. Like that's the question I'd ask you: is Baker or Geno? Baker 73, Geno 66.
It's tough because Baker's coming off of a great performance. It feels like whenever you look at someone's like game log, you say, "Oh well, he can get to 20, he can get to 29." It's because he hit the high end of his variance with the touchdowns.
Yeah.
Now 381 yards.
Yeah.
Love
On
that.
28 attempts.
Now, yeah.
What are the Packers doing, man?
Let me scroll back, scale out at all quarterbacks. So I got Fields. I don't know. Can you really justify Baker at 73 over like Kyler at 76?
Yes, I can. Given, I think the Bears defense is decent, and I think Kyler's really struggled. So,
yeah,
like,
it hasn't been great.
Baker will be more efficient. Kyler has a rushing, but like, I can definitely justify Baker above Kyler.
Multiple stacking candidates. Yeah. So where's Baker then? We know Fields is our QB1. Where's Baker?
Below Geno.
Okay.
So, which means he's below Dak and Tua.
Okay.
QB5? That might be.
I don't
even know.
I wouldn't argue it really.
I'm probably not going to get there. I guess because I don't want to use 5 quarterbacks. So
yeah, that's the thing. Multiple stack candidates though.
Yeah.
I think the biggest case against Baker is I'm going to play Rashad White, and while White has a great receiving role,
I'll use them together. I don't care. That's fine.
Then you're banking on the Bucs to be the highest scoring team, which
maybe
16-1.
Maybe. All right, let's go to your second track and talk about the Atlanta Falcons. Back to Taylor Heineke, and the money line shifted in favor of the Falcons when they benched Desmond Ridder, so seems bad for him. This total is weirdly high. I kind of love the under, but it's still high, so we can't totally dismiss it. It's 44.5. So talk to me about the Falcons with Heineke, and let's see if we can identify anything that is noteworthy within those splits.
Yeah, should be. This is the fastest game on the board, and pretty much any Colts game is the fastest game when you average things out based on my numbers. But fastest game could have some juice. Depends on a couple injuries. Depends on what we see with Heineke here. But he replaced Desmond Ridder at halftime in Week 8 against the Titans when Ridder had 5 sacks on 17 dropbacks. Heineke started Week 9 and 10. Injured his hamstring in Week 10, so he's got like 2 partial games and a full game from him. And then the team went back to Ridder after the bye. So like we have a sample here, but it's not the best sample because only 2 of those games were with Heineke starting and he didn't finish one of them. So a little bit tricky. And it is worth noting that Drake London missed Week 9. So this is just a really problematic sample to sort of dig into. But on a per dropback basis, Heineke's at 0.10 passing net expected points per dropback. League average is about 0.07 this year. Ritter's been a minus 0.01. Ritter's had a polarizing sort of season in a sense. He hasn't been as bad, I think, as some people would imply, but he's also been subpar overall. Now, the biggest, thing that stands out to me, if you adjust for opponents faced, Heineke's at a plus 0.05, so he's played above expectation in terms of passing net expected points, with Ridder at a minus 0.08, so really underperformed once you actually account for opponents a little bit better. Now, it is a 79 dropback sample for Heineke, so I don't want to factor that in, and they have about the same ADOT of 8.3 yards, so I do think it's a boost to efficiency, but I can't sit here and say that Heineke is definitively a substantial upgrade. What I think jumps out more is sort of team tendencies a little bit, and even that's been kind of up and down. So, in that Week 9 game, that full game, Heineke threw 38 times for 268 and a touchdown, 0.08 passing net expected points per dropback against the mid-level Vikings D. It was fine. But with Ridder under center this season, the team's pass rate over expectation has been minus 11.4%. If you look specifically at the plays, like the games with Heineke under center, they had a plus 1.4 pass rate over expectation in the second half whenever he replaced Ridder. That's kind of interesting that he came in to replace the quarterback and they didn't just stay run heavy. They kind of went a little bit more pass heavy, at least for them. I mean, plus 1.4 you'll take for a team this run heavy. But it was a minus 6.5 in his full game. And then through 3/4 of week 10, it was minus 16.7%. So it was really all up and down. And I don't want to sit here and say like this team is going to throw the ball a ton. But they leaned on Bijan Robinson in that game. He had 22 carries, 95 yards and a score. So I'll just shout that out for you. I don't really know what to make of this. What I think overall is that it's definitely not a downgrade in efficiency. They could be more pass heavy, but this game should be like up tempo. I kind of like the Colts to a certain point, especially if they get Michael Pittman. The salaries are low, like London 62, Pitts, his salary is 55, and Bijan's is 7,100. I just don't know like what to do with this change. I want to buy into some certain things, but I don't quite see it. I know you love Bijan more than I do typically. You're pulling up Drake London. What are you thinking the expectations are from this team with Heineke back under center?
The same. I think there's no difference. I think they're the exact same, which is why London is intriguing because like if you gave me London with Ritter at 62, I feel like people would probably be pretty intrigued by that, given that he had a $1.72 2 weeks ago. It was against the Bucs and like they're terrible against the pass, but the Colts aren't like great. Like they're fine, but they're not great. Indoor game on a slate that has a lot of low totals. It has a high total, even if I disagree with it. It's a pace up spot for Atlanta. So like I don't like the low 6,000 range at receiver. I think I prefer to dip down in the low 5,000 range. But like, if I wind up having, 65 or so on the table, I feel like I'm going Drake London over Curtis Samuel, Drake London over Brandon Cooks, over Josh Downs. I think that relative to his tier, London's kind of a standout. Do you agree with that?
A standout?
Relative to his tier. Like, I prefer to skip over this tier. But, like, let's say I had 62. I'm pretty firm. Pretty okay putting me in there.
So I'm not counting Lockett at 67. That's too high.
I might prefer more of a Lockett.
I'd prefer Lockett. I still think there's a lot to like about Tyler Lockett.
Sure.
He's easy to gloss over, though.
He falls down too much. That's my critique of Tyler Lockett. He can't stay.
He does kind of fall down a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really annoying.
Yeah, I'd probably go London over. I like Josh Downs fine if there's no Michael Pittman, but it makes more sense probably to go with London.
What is this? Well, what is this? When is the last time Josh Downs had a good game?
All right. You remove a
1973.
Remove a 31% target share from a team, and that's going to stay the same, I'm sure. So
yeah, I mean, but like also he didn't play most of that game against the Steelers, and he had 3 targets for 19 yards.
Yeah, the Steelers are all right. Yeah, I mean, there's like JSN who I don't love, Dobbs I don't love. Oh my god.
I want alphas who have yardage upside, so I'd rather go Alec Pierce than Josh Downs. Sorry for liking yardage in a contest where yardage matters.
Yeah, 0.88 yards per route run for your guy Alec Pierce, who I like too. I hate whenever you do this stuff because like I like Alec Pierce, but now I gotta like hate on him.
Yeah.
So is Drake London then like a cash game consideration?
If I had I would not reconfigure my lineup to get away from him if I had 62. That's what I would say.
Because we might be in that range.
Sure. I think he's not a cross off. So yeah, I think he's a consideration at least.
Okay.
I like Bijan too, but I'm not gonna berate you with that.
What about Pitts?
Not totally off him. I prefer to get to the 6,000 range at tight end. Personally, we got real close to putting Pitts in my loves this week, but I think I like Tucker Kraft a bit more too at the 53. Under the assumption Reed does not go, just that's a lot of targets available on that team. They've got a better quarterback than the Falcons do, but like I think that Pitts is a consideration as well. I'm not opposed to that. I think all 3 Falcons, the legitimate Falcons, are like in play this week.
The legitimate Falcons. I mean, he still can get some downfield work from Heineke and stuff, so you could do worse.
I agree. So yeah, I'm probably gonna have Falcons, and I feel okay about that personally. None of them are like definitely guys I want to go to, but like I'll have some for sure. Let's finish up here with my second trend, talking about the Browns defense. Typically when we talk home road splits, we're talking offenses like the Cowboys and stuff like that. But here, I think it's pertinent with the Browns defense as they face the Texans. They get Case Keenum here instead of CJ Stroud, which means I'm not touching the pass catchers, but I think there's enough here to consider Devin Singletary at a salary of $6,200. At home this year, the Browns defense led up negative 0.26 passing net expected points per dropback. They're at negative 0.07 against the run. Those are ungodly numbers, like unreal how good the Browns are at home. But on the road, they're pretty mortal. In fact, they're actually letting up a worse than average number in both categories. They're at 0.13 against the pass and 0.01 against the run. Part of that is schedule because they face the Ravens and Rams on the road, but they also let up 29 points to the Broncos, 24 to the Seahawks, 38 to the Colts, and there was some special team stuff in there, but then also 26 to the Steelers on the road. I think there was a defensive touchdown there too. So I think they're very good. They're a very good defense, but the Browns are less daunting when they're on the road than when they're at home, which opens the door for Devin double tutties. He had 26 carries and 5 targets on a 75% snap rate last week. Dameon Pierce effectively got squeezed out of the lineup in that game. If Singletary were higher salaried, I'd worry more about quarterback play. But for $6,200 in this role, I'm still inclined to give him a whirl. Where are you on Singletary? And are you willing to go to him here? Or does the combo of a matchup with the Browns and Case Keenum push you off?
Willing to go there, yes. Due to the salary, it's a little more. That's a lot about the salary, which is the type of stuff I've been trying to talk about, not liking to do. But it's also the role's good. I think he's been playing his best football. He's right before the show, he was my RB3. I think I like Chuba Hubbard more. You make a good point for like the defense being not as good. Here is what we might typically expect, but very much a better matchup for sure for Chuba Hubbard. So Singletary, I think, is getting bumped out of my core play territory in favor of Hubbard. But I'm not going to talk anyone out of him. I'm sure he's going to rate out well for optimizers, but maybe not.
I guess he was. He's rating out better than Chuba when it comes to like optimizers, which means he'll have a higher roster rate. I think the Chuba is a bit too low in those right now based on the role that he's had recently. I think they're in the same tier. I'm not fully on the Chuba over Hubbard yet, but I'm like, what?
Wait. You said Chuba over.
Oh, sorry. Chuba over double tutties.
Okay.
But like I see the case for it, and I wouldn't be shocked if I wound up there by Sunday. I think it's a consideration to maybe have both in like if you really need to save salary, as opposed to getting to Rashad White, which bummed me out. But like if you really need to save salary, you could go with Ty Chandler, double tutties, and Hubbard. I think that's like at least in play if you really want to save salary. Like if you want to go Dak, CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, that might not get you enough to get there either. But like if you're desperate at receiver, I think that is in play.
And let me just ask this: if we don't get, why are the I hate when I go to a team's page and their injury report and
they list the opposing team only. The Seahawks are the worst. Yeah.
If there's no Kenneth Walker, I don't know if that's like even feasible or plausible at this point. If there wouldn't be, where's Charbonnet?
Probably one. Assuming Jeffrey Simmons sits again for the Titans, which I think he will.
Probably one overall or one among the value guys?
One overall, I think.
Yeah.
Just like his snap rate's too good.
He'd be the clear RB3 then, right? Like he would be one of the top 3.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, okay.
I think so. Yeah.
Rest up, Kenny.
Yep. I think he's going to play, but hypothetically throwing it out there for sure. Just to be safe. Weather for this week, only 2 games have wind speeds above 11 miles or above 10 miles per hour. That's Jags and Bucks, which is at exactly 11, and Dolphins, Cowboys at 11. Slight downgrades, but nothing too crazy. Both those games still very much okay. Just check back on the weather on Sunday. Let's go position by position now and outline our favorite plays for week number 16. Brandon, let's begin things at quarterback. Who are you turning to there?
Justin Fields. my number one guy this week at 8,300. I think he's the only standout play of the week. He gets a matchup with a bottom 3 adjusted pass defense, according to numberFire's metrics. He's faced 5 bottom 8 pass defenses. He's averaged 220 yards, 1.6 touchdowns as a passer, 10.8 carries, 56 yards, and 0.4 touchdowns as a rusher. Second QB love doesn't really exist. I could go a lot of different ways. I don't know who you have at this point.
I have Dak. I'm going to switch to Geno, though. So
I was going to say I might move to Geno more likely, but I think Kyler at least deserves some attention if I like this game enough. Very obvious stack candidate with Trey McBride. I know you like the Bears defense a bit, but
they're fine.
Kyler hasn't had a lot of great matchups. So it's been like, it's kind of hard to anticipate what he'll get, but 235 yards and a touchdown against like somewhat similar pass defenses. Not as much rushing as you would typically see, but not the same salary for Kyler either as you typically see. So I think he's in the conversation, but it just really depends on your stacks. I think Geno, Kyler, Dak, maybe Baker in that conversation for QB2.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of guys in consideration. The one thing that's not a consideration for me is putting anybody other than Fields as my quarterback 1 for this week. Similar to you there, the Cardinals ranked 31st against the pass based on a numberFire schedule adjusted metrics. And Justin Fields, since he returned from that thumb injury, is averaging 12.3 carries for 63 yards per game on the ground. He's had only 2 rushing touchdowns all year. I had Fields as an anytime touchdown scorer against Detroit 2 weeks ago because of expected rushing touchdown regression, and that hit there. And I think we'll still see more given how much he is running right now. He has an obvious stack candidate in DJ Moore. He has a good bring back candidate in Trey McBride as well. So yes, it'll be a very popular game stack to have Fields with Moore with McBride, but sometimes the chalk is chalk for a reason. I think that's the case here. So I think I will use Fields against you in our head-to-head, and he will be in my main tournament lineup for this week as well. Number 2, I am going to go Geno Smith. I think I'm just going to settle on that because, again, if we dislike so many quarterbacks, we might as well use a quarterback in a game where he's facing a terrible secondary and has a low salary at 66. And I think the Titans can do enough to keep the Seahawks pushing. That's what you need out of a Pete Carroll-led teams. You need pushback on the opposing side. But I think the Titans can give us that with Tannehill this week. Geno has an obvious stack candidate again with DK Metcalf at 76. We can run it back with DeAndre Hopkins at 71. I think it makes a lot of sense. So I'm okay saving some salary this week with Geno Smith. Maybe that's stupid, but they've been a lot better as an offense since Abe Lucas came back at left tackle. That Cowboys game was his first game back since week 1. So I think with that in mind, I'm okay going Geno Smith and just saving salary at quarterback at $6,600. Running back, what you turning to there this week?
Rachaad White, 7,700 with the salary there. Very reasonable. Good matchup on the ground. Jags are 26th in adjusted rush defense, according to numberFire. White's been at 81% of the snaps, at least in 5 straight games, or 80%, I should clarify, in 5 straight games. In that stretch, just shy of 110 scrimmage yards, 36% overall red zone share. And I know it's not fair to do because running back rules change and stuff, but just for context, if you look at the main slate running backs this year, White's played 80.1% of the team's snaps. Just 2 other guys are even above 70%. That's Travis Etienne and Tony Pollard. He's got the best role on the slate. I don't want to overthink it at all. Going to play him a ton. Second love is Ty Chandler at a salary of 6,900. I know it's a tough sort of rush matchup, but great role last week. 80.6% snap rate, 23 carries, 4 targets. Has had the yardage over 150 there in terms of scrimmage yards. 57% total red zone share. Not going to overthink that one either, even if the role scales back a little bit. Probably undersalaried for a game that might be it's still one of the more stackable games, even if we don't necessarily love the quarterbacks in it. Third love I have warmed up to Chuba Hubbard at the salary of 6,400. Just not a great rush defense that he's facing. And his snap rates in the past 4 games have been 64%, 64%, 77 and 75%. And if you look at that sample, 25.5 adjusted opportunities per game, so carries plus double your targets, just shy of 100 scrimmage yards, over a 55% red zone share. I think it's been sort of a breakout for him quietly. Salaries there, matchups there. I wouldn't fault anyone for going Singletary. I might still go Singletary, but I think Chuba's very clearly like a top 4 or 5 play at running back as of Thursday morning.
Yeah, they've been really run heavy since they fired Frank Reich. I think they just kind of want the season to be done. And like Chuba's benefiting. So I think that makes sense. My first love is also Rachaad White, $7,700, not 76. He hasn't had many plus matchups this year, but he does get one this week against the Jags. And White has always had a good median expectation. Like he's always been solid from a median expectation perspective. But he's now adding the building blocks for upside. He's at 130 plus yards in scrimmage in 2 straight games. His max output this year is 25.9 FanDuel points. I think he's going to top that in the pretty near future. So Rachaad White, with the role he's got right now, with this matchup, with how well this offense is playing, I think that he is a core play for sure. I Ty Chandler as my second love, but you talked about him pretty in depth. I still think he's a very good play for this week. I do want to talk briefly on Bijan Robinson, though, just kind of outline why I find him intriguing. He's facing the Colts. Colts are a middling rush defense. They're okay. Bijan has kind of been, I don't want to say like predictable. I don't know. He's kind of gone as expectations for the offense have gone. And I've got higher expectations for the offense when they're at home against a middling defense than I did playing in that slop fest last week or playing against the Jets and stuff like that. So I've not been on the past couple weeks when he's flopped, and his salaries come down big time. You talk a lot about how when guys score, the salaries increase and they become worse plays. Bijan's gone the opposite way, where the salaries come down quite a bit. In the games that Bijan has played this year, where he's been fully healthy, he is at 86.2 yards in scrimmage per game. He has 13.5 carries and 4.9 targets. That assumes there was no bump for him, where he got that bump in the middle part of the year. Like maybe it scales back a bit, but I still think that Robinson's a good play. So prefer Chandler as far as like cash games go, but Bijan definitely a consideration for me in tournaments at $7,100. I do think Singletary is still in play at 62. I want to get to the high-salaried receivers. Singletary makes that a lot easier. Just a really good spike in his role last week with Keenum starting. The Browns defense has been beatable when they've been on the road. If we look at the games Singletary has been lead back, including a couple of true duds, he's at 93.1 yards from scrimmage per game in that sample. That's tied for second on the main slate in each player's most relevant sample, trailing only Ty Chandler, which is a 1-game sample. So for 62, I think Singletary makes a lot of sense. I understand the argument in favor of Chuba Hubbard. And like you said, I might get there too by Sunday, but I think both those guys very similar and very worthy of low salaried slots in our lineups. Wide receiver, what you go into there?
I'm debating. I love Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm gonna stick with what I got for now. ARSB, I can get there with the value. I can play 2 value running backs this week if I need to. St. Brown makes a ton of sense to me. 28% target share since the bye, 85 yards per game, 2.7 downfield targets per game, 2.2 in the red zone, 45% red zone target share, 27% of the end zone targets. Vikings have faced a high rate of targets per route to receivers as well. 24th by yards per route run. I think it's a good matchup overall. Going to be good conditions. I think that I'm higher on this game than you are. I know that, but if I'm picking one receiver above 8,000, it's going to be St. Brown. Second love, I'm sticking with DK Metcalf. He's kind of shaping up to be like one of my favorite plays of the whole slate.
I agree.
I already talked about his profile in detail, but just to reiterate, just everything points to an eruption potential spot here. 138 air yards per game in like a relevant sample with Geno and Kenneth Walker since the bye. 48% of the team's air yards, and the Titans are 28th in yards per route run, 30th in catch rate over expectation allowed to receivers, and just they're also funneling a lot of production to receivers in terms of target per route rate. They're 30th there. Third love was, are you going to pivot your loves at all? Your
I
third
don't
love?
think so.
Okay. It was going to be Dontavian Wicks. I think he still makes sense as a value play. I am warming up though to Drake London a ton.
Cool.
And that if I can play like Hubbard or Singletary and London, I'm not really like forcing any plays I don't like. And I would be doing that with like Wicks.
Sure.
But London, 24% target per route rate, which is, strong. It's like a Marquise Brown, DK Metcalf, DJ Moore level. But he's been a lot better than I realized in terms of yards per route run. 2.11.
Yeah.
Receiver average is like 1.54. He's got a path to double-digit targets if this team's a little more pass heavy. So I should probably aim to cut off my receivers at 6,200 pretty often if I can.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be able to, just because I really want to get to DK a lot. DK probably is my second highest salaried receiver at 76.
It depends on what you do at tight end.
Yeah, but I'm going to use Trey McBride. So that's part of why. So, but like, if I use Jake Ferguson and I get to Drake London, yeah, that's pretty sick. I think London's actually a good play this week, so I agree with you there. My first love is DJ Moore. $8,200 is not low, but like Moore is worth it. He has 100 plus yards in 4 out of Justin Fields' 9 full games this year. The weather in Chicago is actually not bad. Like I'm confused why this game isn't getting talked up more from a DFS perspective. I bet the under, so like maybe that's why. But like, yeah, people are not talking about
that's why people heard Jim bet the under.
Moron. It was weird phrasing. It's not like the totals declining, stuff like that, but like it's also guys we like who are facing the freaking Cardinals. Like, why are we not higher as a collective community on this game? Cardinals 31st against the pass. I'm gonna have a lot of Fields. Only natural that Moore should be my top love. I think these guys are great. My second love is DK Metcalf. Similar to you, great matchup against a bad secondary in the Titans. As you laid out, great target shares recently. I mentioned the high leverage stuff before. Absolute eruption potential for DK Metcalf, and you're getting that for 76. Like, I like the high salary guys, but like, DK's best case scenario is on par with those guys outside of Tyreek Hill. With Nick Mullins starting for Jefferson, I think that like it's the same for there. So I think DK can do that too. My third love is Jameson Williams. He earned 7 targets last week. Didn't do a lot with it, but that also means people probably shouldn't be on him super much. It's a great game environment with a very efficient quarterback, best quarterback in football, my darling boy. The Vikings defense is aggressive, which could lead to big plays. I think he's worth the risk at 52. I do think that Dontavian Wicks is worth it if Reed and Watson sit too at 54. So I like him. He gets deep targets as well. Pretty talented guy. So I do like Dontavian Wicks. If there were to be no Pittman, I think he'll play. But if there's no Pittman, I would consider Alec Pierce too. But like I think Williams is my top guy, my top boy there. Tight end, what you going to there?
Trey McBride. We're talking eruption potential for DK Metcalf. McBride has it. The volume just went there without Marquise Brown last week. 11
Is McBride
targets.
A lock for your head-to-head lineup?
I'm getting tempted of moving away from him in order to get to Drake London, but I don't think that's the right play. So he's going back into lock potential, lock territory. Caught 10 of those 11 targets for 102 yards. The Bears, very good tight end matchup. 29th in catch rate over expectation allowed, 25th in target per route rate to tight ends. In Murray starts, McBride's got single game target shares of 29, 24, 21, 39, and 29%. Also the biggest touchdown regression candidate among tight ends on the main slate in my model. I'm just going to go there, and I can do it. Also like Jake Ferguson, though, and again, reasonable salary to get exposure to that potentially great matchup. Maybe we're a little bit lower on it than other people, but still think it's a good game overall. 3 straight games with a target share of at least 20%. Miami 23rd in catch rate over expectation allowed to tight ends this year. Dallas needs a bounce back, and Ferguson's been involved. I'd rather play him than like Brandon Cooks. So
I agree. I had the same 2 as you, and I'm going to stick with them. I think that's the right way to go at tight end this week. Trey McBride, Jake Ferguson. McBride, if we can get a wide receiver with his target shares for $7,000 in a good matchup, we'd flock to that, right? Like and he fills tight end.
Yeah.
And they're not hollow targets either. He has 85 plus yards and 3 out of 5 games with Kyler Murray starting. This is a great bring back for Fields lineups. I would say for my head-to-head, I might be more likely to use McBride than DJ Moore, despite the fact I will be using Justin Fields. Like I might go naked Justin Fields in like a head-to-head, just because I want to get Trey McBride. I think he's a slightly bigger priority for me than DJ Moore is. So that's where I'm at there.
Like what are the routes to McBride having like a 12% target share this week?
None.
Right.
It doesn't exist.
Think...
Yeah. I'll keep Ferguson here. I'll mention some guys I like after that, but like 18% target share for Jake Ferguson since the bye week, 26% of the red zone targets. He's had 8 targets in 3 consecutive games and 70 yards in 2 of those. And like in this game, you know, it's not the best environment, but it's still a very good environment. So I like Ferguson a lot. I think David Njoku is worth getting to at times. 66, like his volume's been great given how pass heavy they've been. Good matchup against Houston. They're just a bad pass defense in general. So I like Njoku. If Trevor Lawrence goes, Evan Engram is very interesting. All of a sudden, Komet and field stacks. Like honestly, like the 6,000 range is just really good. Maybe some Kraft, maybe some Pitts. So tight end is weirdly okay this week. Like it's better than running back.
That's the hardest part about McBride, but McBride stands out so much from a target share standpoint. So
yeah. Defense, what you got there?
I got the Seahawks. They need to do stuff. They're going to be relevant. Played the Eagles well. Ryan Tannehill wasn't particularly good this year when he was playing. 11% sack rate. I still like DeAndre Hopkins well enough, not in the same lineups, but Seattle at 3,500, definitely a defense I'll have a lot of.
Yeah, I like them too, just because the salary is low. I like the Panthers though. They're facing the Packers, which means it has to be my non-Wicks and non-Tucker Kraft lineups. But like, and the Packers should win this game. So like, there's that. But also, the Panthers defense has just been like good recently. Salary is $3,200. So like, if I really want to save salary, like, and I do, I'm willing to go there. Using last week too. I like them less this week than I did last week because I think Jordan Love's better than Desmond Ridder. But like, I'm okay going there at times, especially if both Reed and Watson are out, because that does ding the Packers offense quite a bit. Don't mind the Seahawks you mentioned. I think the Bucks at 37 are interesting if it's CJ Beathard as opposed to Trevor Lawrence. So some good options for spending down at defense for this week. Any final thoughts for you this week, Brandon, before we close up shop for week 16?
A lot of ways to get different. Probably some games that Jim and I glossed over that you might like. Maybe games we're higher on that
Jets. Load up.
Well, you know,
roll them out.
But also, thanks everyone for sticking with me while my voice was.
It got better as the show went along.
It did, yeah.
Yeah, sounded good.
Sierra brought me some tea. I drank tea for this. I can't stand tea. And some coffee. So I've been chugging. If anyone's really observant, I've been drinking out of 3 different mugs. But shout out Sierra. Nobody knew until I drew attention to it. So
yeah, I didn't notice. She's very sneaky. Compliment her on her sneakiness skills. Thank you, Sierra, for your contributions to the program. Brandon, people have questions for you on Twitter. Where can they find you there?
I'm on Twitter at Gdula13, GDULA13.
Happy holidays to you, Brandon. Happy holidays to Sierra and the cats as well. Happy holidays to all the listeners, too. I'm on Twitter at Jim Saunas. You can find me on Threads at Jim.Saunas. You can find FanDuel Research on Twitter at FanDuel Research. Want to thank you all for tuning in for today. Happy holidays to all of you. Be safe. Be happy. Have some fun. Good luck with your DFS lineups. Ignore them. Have time with your family instead, but set them and then forget them for a bit and circle back once the slates have closed. Have a fantastic weekend. We'll talk to you all once again next week. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.